Hey guys, so this video is on natural selection. It's another one of our mechanisms of evolution, or something that can drive evolution. So the intention of this video is to understand what natural selection is and to understand how natural selection could start to drive and lead to evolution. So natural selection is defined as the differential survival and reproduction of individuals due to differences in phenotype. So it's a lot to take in, but if we break that down, differential survival means that not all organisms have the same chance of survival, and they also have not all the same chance of reproducing. And the reason why that occurs is due to differences in their phenotype or in the traits that they express. So for example, color of skin, fur, height, etc. So it's a key part of evolution. And at first was come up with the idea from Charles Darwin. So he first thought of the idea that, hey, there must be something that's causing some organisms to survive and have a better chance of surviving, while others not so much. So you can see in this diagram here, we've got different phenotypes. We've got a long neck giraffe, a medium and a short. And based off the environment that they're found in, the differential rates means that this giraffe with the longest neck has the greatest chance of surviving and the greatest chance of reproduction. And therefore they're more likely to pass on their genetics or their genes compared to our short neck giraffe. So again, some examples, having, for example, cheetahs with different sized legs, there's going to be a particular length of bone that's most suited to survive and be able to reproduce. So ability to catch prey, run away from predators. And again, it's because of these differences, and some of them have a greater chance of surviving compared to others. So how it works? Well, for natural selection to actually work, there must be some sort of variation in the population. And there also has to be the fact that not all individuals are capable of surviving and reproducing. So that variation comes from differences in genotype, which therefore influences phenotype. So moths, for example, the variation here is same species of moth, but the variation is the color of their wings. And that's caused by a difference in genotype. So when one phenotype is better suited to a particular environment, the organism with that phenotype has what we call increased fitness, and they're more likely to survive. So if we were to think of an environment that was full of industrial buildings and where it's going to produce a lot of smoke and ash, the building is going to be quite dark. And so a selection pressure would be the ability to be able to camouflage and hide away from predators in an area where all the buildings are dark. So if we had variation, we would probably say that the increased fitness would go to the black moth. They're going to have a greater chance of surviving and reproducing because the selection pressures such as predators are going to mean that they've got a greater chance of surviving those pressures compared to a white moth that might stand out on some of the darker buildings. So those white moths are going to eventually have a reduced chance of surviving, and we might end up with only black moths left in the population. So when I talk about fitness, well, in biology and in natural selection, fitness refers to how likely you are to survive and produce offspring. So if you've got a low fitness, you're going to produce fewer offspring, or you're going to have a less likely chance to actually survive to produce offspring. Or those with higher fitness are more likely to survive, are going to produce a larger amount of offspring over the course of their life. And that then means that the alleles in the population are going to start to go towards the ones with a higher fitness compared to ones that are lower. So over time, those ones with increased fitness, they're going to be more likely to survive the selection pressures of the environment. So they're going to be able to survive things such as drought, habitat, predators. The ones with the higher fitness are going to increase their allele frequency in the population. So if we think about this population of mice here, we'd say that there's probably a greater frequency of brown alleles compared to black. But because black had the greatest fitness over time, we can see that the black allele frequency is much higher than the brown allele frequency. And that's what evolution is. It's just the change of frequencies over time. So if we had another 3 or 4, pictures, we might end up with only black mice, and the brown alleles may become 0 in this population. So there are a few types of natural selection. The stabilizing, directional, and disruptive. They're all just different forms of natural selection that sort of pick for different traits. So in stabilizing, we generally pick within the middle sort of range. So for example, eggs produced by birds, they're not going to produce 100, they're not going to produce 5. Natural selection is sort of led to picking within the middle. So maybe let's say 10 eggs. And so that's sort of getting to pushing, natural selection is pushing away from either extreme, and we're pushing towards the middle. Directional is where we push to one N. So in the example we had earlier, we had black and white moths. Well, in that example, black moths were being selected for. So we're actually picking for one extreme over the other. And you can see that the shift in population has gone one way compared to the other. And the middle one is disruptive, where we're not actually picking the middle, we're actually picking either end. So for example, if you had black, white and grey rabbits, we're picking the black and the white, but we're not picking, or natural selection isn't necessarily picking the one in the middle. We want either black or white, but we don't want the ones right in the middle. And so it's just naturally selecting for traits that are either end of the norm. So when natural selection is really important is a change in environment can alter a fitness of an individual very quickly. So polar bears, we know, have really good fitness or really high fitness in a really white environment. They're going to be more likely to overcome some of those selection pressures. So being able to find food, avoid predators, that sort of thing. Now, if we change the environment, you could see very quickly that polar bear's fitness may decrease very quickly. So imagine if it was bright purple everywhere where a polar bear was found. You'd imagine that they'd stand out much more. Their fitness would then reduce and they're less likely to pass on their genes to the future offsprings. So a change in environment can then really alter natural selection. So in review, natural selection is a process which drives evolution, and it only works when we have variation and the fact that we can't all survive and reproduce. There's got to be some traits that have high fitness that we select for. Those with the high fitness pass on their genes to future generations more regularly than those with the lower fitness. So natural selection is a really important driver of evolution, and I hope this video helped you guys get your head around it.